It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. Tariff-free Tuesday is beginning. Gary, how are you?
I'm doing good. Let's start out. I want to make sure we play this because we played it at the end of the show yesterday, but I'll forget to play it if I don't play it now.
All right, play it now.
And this is just from the DNC over the weekend, picking their new leaders.
Yeah.
And we played it at the end of the show. And if you haven't heard it, stop what you're doing unless you're driving.
Yeah.
And if you're driving, just do the automation thing if you've got it.
Yeah. Keep your knees on 8 and 4.
Yeah, that's my automation. But my autonomous, not automation, my autonomous vehicle is just
autonomous vehicle is when I'm texting and hoping the car will stay on the road. That's about as fully autonomous as I get.
Just very quickly.
What?
You know, and
by the way, don't text and drive. That's stupid.
My one, my new vehicle will be 8 years old, but it has all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was driving it, and I went, okay, is that wind? Is that a tire? You know, I wasn't sure. Mm-hmm. So I just let go. I'm on the tollway, and there's nobody, you know, with a mile in front of me or a mile behind me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fine. And it's like, I don't know, four lanes, I think.
Right.
And so I just take my hands off the wheel to see if the car moves a little bit. It's only like 3 seconds. All of a sudden, hands off the wheel. I'm like, I didn't even know I had that.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, where'd that come from? You know, and in the windshield, because I can see everything in my windshield, It's like big red light, put your hands back on the wheel, grab the wheel. It's like, whoa, all right, jeez.
You know what they need now? A huge hand that will come out of the headrest, smack in the back of the head.
Oh, now see, you just drove me to something else.
What?
It's 2025.
It is.
Remember?
Oh, what was going into effect?
Is it 2025 or 2026? Where and the Democrats passed
it was 26, but yeah.
But the 26 vehicles would be coming out this year, right?
Later this year.
Later this year. And this is where they're supposed to have all the monitoring of your face. Now, I never saw, because first they were supposed to come up with what the system would be.
Yeah.
That would monitor your face, that would monitor your eyes. If you got tired, do whatever. Mm-hmm. I just need to find out when that's going to be implemented so I can buy the vehicle the year before that will last me the rest of my life.
Right.
I mean, it may sit in the driveway, and I'll drive the other vehicles I have until they just blow up, and then I'll keep that one for 7-8 years from now that doesn't have all the technology.
Right.
Because you know that's going to be a nightmare.
Right. No,
when they start out with that technology.
Yeah.
My question is, are Republicans going to reverse that? Because remember, they wanted to reverse it a couple of years ago when we talked about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of stuff will be reversed, but some stuff like that, the problem is if it didn't reach the chatter level of everything, like, EV mandates, that was still blowing up, then the problem is that it stays in effect and there's nothing done about it if it doesn't reach that political level of conversation. But hopefully they're on it. I mean, they seem to be on everything else.
And since we're in the vehicles, just for a moment, I'll get to the audio cut I want to play in just a second.
Okay.
But the guy who called yesterday who said he had a Ford that had a lot of problems, we were talking about vehicles and, foreign
he bought a new Ford and
manufacturers versus whatever. And then when we were walking out, I went, wow. I have, it will be 22 years old this year. Mm-hmm. In May, I think it was built in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. It's a Mazda Tribute.
Right.
But it was, this is the when Ford made it.
Right.
For Ford and Mazda used to have an agreement. Mm-hmm. This is made in St. Louis. I was originally going to buy the Ford Escape way back then, 22 years ago, and I just didn't like. I liked the way the vehicle looked, but I just didn't like the way it drove. And somebody said, "Well, you should, try the Mazda Tribute, built on the same basic frame, but built a little differently, the ride is better. And it was. So I bought it. But I still have that vehicle today. I've had very little problems. It's, I think it's probably 249,000 something miles. I'm very close to 250,000 miles. 22 years old in May. And I drove it to work last night. I drove it to work tonight.
Yeah.
And I love the vehicle. You sit high up in it. I've had, everything's sort of had the stuff that has to get replaced. For example, a few years ago, I got all brake lines in it.
Right.
But that was, for the longest time, most of my life, I paid for. I don't finance cars. And I buy them and then I keep them for as long as I possibly can.
Sure.
But so I've had really no expenses on it except the repairs. The majority of them were covered in the first 10 years. And then actually a couple of fuel injectors, because I actually got the fuel injector service, was covered by the company. I didn't even know it was like first one was like 2 fuel injectors. One they had to get done, the other one was going. And they said, well, we want to do all 3 because it's way in the back. It's hard to get it. And they said, you want to get all 3 in the back because it's just so tough to get, the labor intensive. But they covered like 2 out of the 3 of them from the warranty because I got the service from the dealership. I'm like, okay, I like that. But I had to get like brake lines replaced. All those had to be replaced. But, but I haven't put anything into it. I don't know. I'm going to guess maybe, and this counts maintenance and oil changes and everything else, maybe $1,000 a year if you averaged it out over that period of time, which is not a lot.
No.
So I just figured, and that
my dad has a 2002 F-250, and he used to haul it. They had a big RV trailer, and he's still has a pontoon boat. He doesn't go out as much. He's 92 in May, but my son wanted it. He said, "Hey, you want to sell it to me if you don't use it for the boat anymore? If you stop using it for the boat." And my dad said, well, I'll just leave it to you. One day I'll just leave it to you because I don't drive it. But we started up. They drive it around, make sure we plugged it in. It's got a built-in heater for the engine in the cold weather and everything else. And my son went up there this weekend with us and took it for, a spin around the block because he was a kid when my dad got that. 23 years ago. So he was a teenager when my dad got that truck, and he used to go with my parents on their RV trips during the summer, and so it was amazing. It's got 68,000 miles on it because he only used it for pulling the RV, and the boat, and so I thought to myself, and that's the year they started changing it was what they called the 1002 October of 2002 engine, so it had problems, but they were all covered, so the engine is practically rebuilt. I mean, all the injectors, everything. And I thought to myself, I've got a truck that I bought, in fact, a year ago this month, coming up here in a couple of weeks. It's been a year. And I put miles on that truck. I buy cars to drive them. And it's been, I thought to myself, because I'm in the cycle now of I want to keep something relatively new, but I love old trucks. I actually regret getting rid of my 2004 Silverado because it was a great truck, and I was going to put a larger. It was a V6, but I had room to upgrade to a V8, smaller V8 if I wanted to. I wanted to rebuild that truck, but I just didn't have the time to go through all of that. But I really wish I had done that because my brother-in-law were talking, and I were talking over the weekend. He's got an older big rig, a Peterbilt, and it's an older one, and an older Cat engine that's been rebuilt a couple of times. I mean, if you look at the technology, we were talking about that with the caller, all this technology, it's all meant to do what? It's all meant to stay in compliance. None of it is about, I won't say none of it is about performance. That's not true because I know the engineers at Peterbilt, at Freightliner, at I know some of the engineers that have worked for GM and Ford, and they are trying to get the best they can out of it. But the ultimate goal that they have to do, what they have to do, they don't have to get you better performance, but they have to, as a government mandate, reach those standards, right? The fleet average standards.
Right.
And that's been the problem across the board, whether it's
Well,
a Class 8 vehicle or passenger vehicle or whatever.
We'll see what happens because Trump has eliminated those standards. But talking about old vehicles, just very quickly, then to this audio cut, you just made me think of the first car my brother and I shared together. And my father found this lady who just took this car to church. And it was like 5 years old. And this was like 1972. And all of a sudden, my father says, let's go and see it. It's a 1967 Ford Fairlane GTA 390 cubic inch. Oh, my God. Every day is a gift because, let's be honest, my brother and I should not be alive today.
Oh, there were so many things.
We shouldn't be alive
Seriously,
today.
so many things. Seatbelt. What, you mean that annoying thing that gets in my way in the seat? What was that?
I remember Jay Leno doing the thing about, I like the old dashboards. You know, you crash, you just take the hose out, you wipe all the flesh off the dashboard.
Oh, my God. Well,
and you go on.
There was a female comedian talking about, back in the day things, and she said, look, seatbelt, no. If your mom wasn't strong enough to hold you, if she had to brake real hard, she didn't really love you. She's got a funny bit about all these things, and I forget her name, forgive me, but there's so many. We had BB gun wars in San Antonio.
I know.
I was a kid. I was
when
6 or 7 years old shooting BB guns at my neighbors.
When I saw the WKRP episode where Dr. Johnny Fever was interviewing this guy who they thought was a child care expert, and he said, by adult standards, children are insane.
Oh, yeah.
I went, well, that's true.
Right.
And it's the same thing. The first time I saw Beavis and Butthead, and I looked at Beavis, and you saw that evil smile.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, that's a 14-year-old male.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah.
All right, but here we go. You ready?
All right.
The DNC last weekend. I want to make sure we played at the end of the show. We know that people go to sleep with the show, and so if we play something at the very end, a lot of times people in the beginning of the show didn't get to hear it, and you have to hear it. The Democratic, the DNC Democratic National Committee picked their chair and vice chair. All right?
Yeah.
Listen to what they had to go through in order to do this.
All right.
All right, here we go. All right?
The rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced. With the results of the previous 4 elections, our elected officers are currently 2 male and 2 female. In order to be gender balanced, we must elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender. So again, this is what we have to do for this vice chair race. We have to elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender. To ensure our process accounts for male, female, and non-binary candidates, we conferred with our RBC co-chair, our LGBT caucus co-chair, and others to ensure that the process is inclusive and meets the gender balance requirements in our rules. To do this, our process will be slightly different than the one outlined to you earlier this week, but I hope you will see that in practice it is simple and transparent. The order of balloting is designed to ensure equal access to the ballot, regardless of gender identity. As we must elect a candidate of any gender as well as 1 male and 1 female vice chair, we will first ask members to elect a candidate of any gender on the first ballot. Any candidate, male, female, and non-binary, can be elected on that ballot. After a candidate is elected on the first ballot, we'll have 1 officer of the 3, so we will then we will know which position is filled of the 1 male, 1 female, and 1 vice chair of any gender.
Now, the reason we're laughing is we could hear the page turn of the folder.
Well, in my mind, in my mind, what I think is actually somebody running up with the new rules midstream.
Okay.
And handing him the new rules because you heard him say, and that will be different than it was earlier this week.
Right.
Because the rules don't quit changing.
Oh, my gosh, it was so fun. And they picked, the best part of it is, who won the elections? 2 white men.
Yes.
After all of that,
Yes.
2 white men.
Yes. Oh, my gosh.
And that's why the Democrats are going to have a hard time winning in the future because they're not changing at all. But I will say this. Even though most of us are going, what the hell's he talking about? It seems to be that was more of a democratic process than anointing Kamala Harris.
That is a solid, probably the most solid point in terms of observing where the Democrats have been in recent months. At least they told you how it was going to go down and people got to vote.
Yes. Exactly.
Wow.
It was just insanity down a different path.
Yeah. By the way, no wonder Kamala always, she was anointed. No wonder she always looked like when she stepped up to the podium that she was just standing in the back of the room and someone actually, hey, you want to say something, by surprise? And she would walk up and, what? She always looked clueless. And there's a reason for that.
We got a great show ahead. 866-98 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Tires command a lot of attention. As a top expense for drivers and a leading cause of CSA violations, any tire maintenance practice that can help extend tire life is worth consideration. Consider tire balancing, which can set you up for savings and a smoother ride before your tires touch the highway. Tire balancing corrects an uneven distribution of weight in tires and wheel assemblies, but the trick is to be proactive and not reactive. Conduct routine pre- and post-trip tire inspections and pay special attention to inflation. Tires with too little air will wear prematurely and create more resistance, which can result in increased fuel consumption, a harsher ride, and ultimately lead to a blowout.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up, we'll talk about Doge. We'll talk about, everybody seems to be, be concerned with who caved, who blinked. I saw that yesterday, so a little bit more on the whole tariff situation and the art of the deal. But first, the Doge stuff yesterday. I mean, I'm just, it's just fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic what's going on. You and I were talking about what's driving Democrats nuts, but it's like the stupid stuff you were talking about where, the White House talking about the fact, if he only works a half day, he only gets credited for a half day.
No, it was the media covering what the White House said about Elon Musk being a special employee. Which is, works 130 hours a year or less or whatever. By the way, that's laughable with Elon Musk. He's just not clocking in. He's working. But then they were saying, this means that unlike a full-time employee, that if he only works a half a day, it only reflects as a half a day. I'm like, are you guys seriously? Go write about something else, will you?
He's not getting paid.
Right, he's not taking pay. In fact, I understand he's paying his own expenses, probably buying food for everybody else.
But we'll talk more about it, but, with the USAID and where because of him looking at – and by the way, the other thing is even Fox News gives the impression that Elon Musk is making the decisions to close down, whether it's the spending for USAID or whatever. He's not doing that. He may be saying, look, this is warped, and the Trump administration does it. Those in authority does it. Elon Musk has no authority.
Well, it's I think it was Fox News, and it was one of those weird stories, the way they write the headline.
Yeah.
Closing it, shutting the doors on Monday, and the offices were closed on Monday after Elon Musk suggests that it goes away. Well, no, you're implying that it was as a result of Elon Musk doing that.
Well, they didn't say suggest in the headline I saw.
Yeah.
It was that he suggested it be shut down. It's like he's shutting it down. Doge is shutting it down.
Right. That's what he was saying, as if he has authority.
listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. In fact, after our show is over, which is at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time.
After it pauses for a few hours. The show's never over.
Oh, that's right. The show's never over. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I understand now. Don't confuse me, even if for just a moment.
We should end the show every morning with, "We'll be right back."
Yeah, because we've said this before. And it used to be where I would do a new show every day. And now it's just a continuation. It
really is. Yeah.
Okay, you're taking a long break, then you're back again.
Right, right.
But, yeah, our podcast is a repeat of the show. You can get it on our Red Eye Radio app, and you can listen during the day if you... a lot of people, and this is the best part, we used to have a lot of people that, worked this shift and then got off it and went, I can't listen to you anymore. It's like, yeah, now you can. Mm-hmm. So that's all good. Yeah. Here's the headline I was looking at where I said, and this came from Fox, and if Fox is doing it, I'm sure other headlines are, Doge announces more than $1 billion in savings after canceling 104 federal DEI contracts. What is the impression that's giving you?
That
Elon
Musk has the authority to do this.
Right. And then they're jumping on it saying, this is the oligarchy controlling.
Yeah.
I wish you would have been around. You were around that day when we did the oligarchy show. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of fun.
No, we've talked about it several times recently. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun that day. But he's not.
I was busy building my wealth so I could be an oligarch. My father was in the hospital. For those that don't know, I was out that morning recently, a couple of weeks ago on that Friday. Dad was in the hospital. He's back home. He's doing all right.
That's good.
But I was still building wealth while I was sitting there with him in the hospital.
Since you mentioned it, my dad was in the hospital. He's in a rehab center right now.
Yeah. How's he doing?
He's doing okay. I hope he gets home soon because when you get to be that age, you're just not comfortable in a place that isn't your home.
Yeah, exactly. My dad was the same thing. And, both of our dads still sharp in their 90s. And my dad was so on top. They would bring, people in to talk to him about, what was going on and everything else. And he's totally on top of everything. I mean, he knows everything about, and they were like, wow. And one of the nurses looked at me and said, wow, he's totally on top of his health. I said, it's kind of like an assignment for him, and because it's everything. But it was he would rather be home, and he did. He's got nurses that come to the house. He and Mom both. So he ended up going back home. But the staff there took so much great care. They were really great with him.
The funny thing is, because it's tough physically. And, he had minor pneumonia. It was in the hospital. Then they said he needs physical therapy just to, because if you're in the hospital for a week and you're that age, you need to walk, you need to do everything. So he's doing all of that. And, he gets irritable at times because of all the drugs he was on. We thought it's like, is he losing his cognitive abilities? Can he no longer, is it some form of dementia? It's like, no, because it doesn't hit that fast. And then he regained it and he's back to being normal. But he wants to be back. But when he gets irritable, I just say, Dad, the only advice I'm going to give you is advice you gave me my whole life. DTJ. Mm-hmm. And I said, you can't get mad at me because if people want him to do things at times, he'll get a little bit irritable,
Yeah.
So I never tell him what to do. I simply say, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you what you would tell me what to tell you.
Yeah.
And I said, DT. So he's now, yesterday when I called, he goes, yeah, I'm trying to DTJ. I'm DTJing. I'm DTJing. I'm DTJing. I'm DTJing. My father just would pound that on me and what it meant was stop complaining and just get the damn job done.
Yeah. My dad was actually kind of that was in the same place mentally and had been there for a couple of days. And he was like, well, there's, really, we have to wait for a couple more tests to come back, and I know it's probably going to be a few days before I go home. So, and I told him I'm at that point. In fact, it was during the evening one day, and I said, "Look, Dad, I'm going to go ahead and go to the house, their house, and hang out with my mom. My brother and my wife were there, helping with Mom, and I want you to get some rest because the thing in the hospital, they come in,
I know,
and they have to. I mean, they've got to come in, they got to check your vitals, or they've got to come in and administer meds and everything else, and you don't you don't get that full, 7-8 hours of sleep, and so I said, look, me sitting here with you isn't helping, so sleep, and I'll see you in the morning, and he's doing much better. I went and saw him on Saturday. I've been up there. I go up most weekends, and he's only a couple hours away. And we were hanging out. I was helping him look at his ice maker. It's kind of on the fritz. We think low water pressure. We were,
Wow.
it's like, he's still working on things. He's still, it's that mindset. Your father, the engineer, my dad, the investigator. The police, so that mind is always curious and working on
always
something.
working. But yeah, so that's that headline there. Doge announces more than $1 billion in savings after canceling 104 federal DEI contracts. And we're like, Doge didn't do anything.
And it was everywhere.
Yeah. I mean,
Elon Musk doesn't have the authority.
Right.
Now, the thing is, you do hire him for that advisory role.
Yes.
You bring him in for a reason.
Yeah.
And, it's one of the things that, we were concerned about Trump's daughter. It wasn't a huge concern. It was like, but there were things that she wanted to do that were more liberal than that we think, right? And so she had his ear, and she was an advisor during the first term. She doesn't want to go back and do that. She says, I'm pretty sure she's talked to her dad on a regular basis. I don't have the greatest concern there. In fact, I'm probably more concerned about Peter Navarro than I am anybody else in any advisory role.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that coming up. But then when you see things like this, Doge subcommittee, which there's the subcommittee, but they're not making any of the decisions. It's Trump making the decisions as to actually what to shut down now. Doge subcommittee invites NPR and PBS chiefs to testify on their federal funding and their systemic biased content.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. That's a reversal from a few years ago, isn't it? But I think that's good. Why is it good? They should bring in these department heads to justify what they're doing.
Yep.
And then the public can decide whether the Republicans are full of horse manure or whether they have a total, solid, legitimate point.
Yep.
And you have it on record. They're under oath. And so that's what I want. And that's the kind of transparency I want. Are these departments necessary?
Right.
And you had, for example, I saw Caroline Levitt out there yesterday with all the things from USAID, which we'll get to here on the show. There's just so much going on. And I thought it was great because when you hear the things that they spend money on, you're like, and you're not talking trillions of dollars, but still everything that they bring up, you're like, well, if there's 100,000 of these things, it actually does add up to serious money after a while. And when you see the stuff that, some of the stuff, like transgender consulting in Ukraine, something like it's just like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, no, sorry, that's not when you have the debt that we have, when you have interest on the debt that's $1.2 trillion. But remember, you're going to have the pushback from Democrats. It's going to be crazy. So you've got to be specific and you've got to show the American people, as they are doing, and they're publicizing it like crazy, what the problem is. You and I said last Friday? After the D.C. Air crash, I said, I'm fine with everything that's going on. If you want to say DEI is a problem with the FAA, go ahead. And by the time we got to the end of the weekend, it was almost accepted that there's huge problems inside the FAA and air traffic controllers when it comes to DEI and not putting qualified candidates in there. In fact, rejecting qualified candidates. And we said at the time, let Trump make these proclamations.
Yeah. Right.
If they're true, fine. If they're not, the public will judge you that way.
Mm-hmm.
But have the full transparency, make both sides make the accusation, and then Republicans are in charge. Be as transparent as you possibly can to explain to the American people and have the debate with the Democrats, because on some of the things that they're talking about, the public goes, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. And that's what you want to do. And so yesterday was a day, on so many fronts. And, we talked about it yesterday on about 90% of what Trump is doing, which is a lot more than a regular Republican president, I agree with.
Yeah, sure.
We talked about the tariffs yesterday, and we'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. There are some minor disagreements. And with some of the, for example, with some of his cabinet picks, as we have said, I would rather not have RFK. I would rather not have their labor secretary.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Tulsi will get in.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because you saw Susan Collins as a yes vote.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know she's a unique one. I don't know, what it is for her. I haven't even seen a whip count for her.
Mm-hmm.
But, when we look at RFK Jr., I'd rather not have him in there. And when it comes to the labor secretary, it was DeRemmer, I think it is. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have her not in there. I mean, and the reason I say this is because they're opposite of what Trump's stated goals are.
Mm-hmm.
He picked someone who doesn't agree with him, and you saw it from Tulsi and you saw it from RFK Jr. last week. Well, we're actually doing his bidding.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, okay, as I said last Friday, I just want to get that done and get moving on to the stuff that they need to get done. But
Pam Bondi moving on to a final Senate vote, and so that will happen soon. They've limited.
She'll get in
through cloture. I think she will. And I've heard nothing that tells us she wouldn't, but I think she'll get in. That's important. And she talked about where she wants to go. She wants to do away with politicizing, using the Department of Justice as a weapon, and that was a big thing during her testimony. But I mean, yeah, that's these things are coming together, and look, it's moving pretty quickly. But Doge, the problem that I have with, including the way Fox News or anybody else writes the headline, you're suggesting in the way you phrase it that he's the guy with the authority. He's got great influence. I don't have any doubt. But they're going through this. By the way, this is what people have been asking for a long time. What did we hear in 2016? Trump is a businessman. Trump is a businessman. Now you've got all of these CEOs that are coming in, including, head of the Department of Energy, somebody who's an energy CEO. All of these things, when you put these together, add up to what people have been pushing for that supported Trump for years, and now even at a greater level. Why is it bad to go through the books and say this isn't working, that's not working, that's waste? It isn't.
Oh,
when you're in the media and you're writing headlines like this, you're making it look like, and again, even Fox News making it look like Elon Musk has the authority, and that gets back very quickly to that whole oligarchy crap. I almost said the other word.
Oh, and the other thing yesterday, it just and I had questions about him when initially he was picked, and that was Marco Rubio, and I think he's doing a great job. I just think he's doing
you talk
a great
about
job.
Somebody who hit the ground running. I have great confidence in him in that role as Secretary of State. And he's working, by the way, on the whole Mexico thing. He's working to coordinate all of that happening. Because look, if we're gonna officially deem the cartels as terrorists, then Mexico needs to know.
Well, that's one of the things here. As we talked about, you really didn't get much with Mexico, and you really didn't get much with Canada yesterday, because when it comes to Mexico, and even the Trump administration has said it, the cartel is intertwined with the government. 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Well, at least we have 30 days to breathe, right? We'll talk about the deals yesterday coming up here.
There's a 10% tariff on breathing. But the 10% blanket tariffs on China have gone into effect. I don't know why we're putting tariffs on blankets, but apparently I thought it was a good idea.
Are there really?
No. It's called a blanket because it's across the board.
Oh.
Blanket tariff. Yeah.
Yawn.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning.
Hi.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going? Hey, absolutely.
All right, here we go. Interesting day yesterday. And it happened much quicker than we thought. I said it would be done in a week, that this thing would end in a week, and it ended in less than a day. And as we said yesterday, it will end in a week with both sides trying to save face. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. I know the Trump surrogate said just a great, masterful deal by Trump. I guess it depends on how you look at it. Number one, if you notice, because when I woke up yesterday is when I first saw the Mexico story.
Yeah, right.
And I went,
I almost texted you. It was about 10 a.m. local.
Yeah, that's right.
And I thought, he's probably awake. I almost texted you.
Yeah, and so the first thing I read on it was Fox. And it says, Trump win. And then you look in it, and I read the statement. I'm like, okay, well, and it looks like they're going to put, 10,000 troops at the border. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's not going to do anything. I mean, troops at the border doesn't do anything. Even by what the Trump administration has said the problem is. And the problem is the cartel is so intertwined with the government. The only way you're going to stop the fentanyl from coming in the country, the only way is for the United States to be involved in the dismantling of the cartels, which means American and Mexican troops and the governments cooperating together.
Well, this is what I wondered about in deeming them officially terrorist organizations, and then the story yesterday that Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, is getting involved. It could be, for Secretary of State, it could be a handshake kind of thing during this 30-day period, part of the conversations, or it could be something, I mean, if you're going to do it, as you mentioned, the cartels have gotten extremely violent. It is there when after El Chapo, there used to be, they say, this kind of unsaid rule during those years. All right, you don't kill civilians, you don't, do this. Well, once their biggest commodity became humans in recent years, I mean, they've always been a part of human smuggling and bringing people across the border. But once that really ramped up, it was all bets were off, and the violence is really on many levels unspeakable. But I don't know what the play will be. I don't know how you enforce that with Mexico, who is an ally, but the groups that run their country are terrorists and they're not allies.
And the reason I bring that up, that Trump knows it's not going to do anything, is because in their proclamation they taught, and it infuriated Mexico because they said, you folks are in cahoots with the cartels. And there's articles been written. I mean, major media has covered it. The payoffs to judges and politicians. The rumors that ex-presidents have been on the payroll and everything else. I mean, all this stuff is out. That's really the problem. But the fact is, what was missing from Trump's press conference, or from his press release, and was buried even in the Fox News story, was Trump agreed to increase enforcement of gun running from the American side to the Mexican side.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, okay, that's the saving face.
Mm-hmm.
The saving face part of it. So they did it both ways. Okay, we give you 10,000 troops, and then you promise that you'll stop the gun running coming from the United States to Mexico, and both can go back to their constituents and say, okay, we did something. On the Canadian deal, I woke up to the Canadian deal. I woke up and I went, okay, where's the saving face on both sides? It looked like when I first woke up, and then I did some investigating on it, except for Trudeau promising to have a fentanyl czar. Almost everything else in there. There may be some minutia stuff, but almost everything else, the Canadian Parliament already passed legislation on in December and January.
Mm-hmm.
Trump got what they already did.
Mm-hmm.
Both of these deals was saving face. There are a few things that we said yesterday. If you want to look at, I don't care, but it's not a contest. Who blinked. But I did say it yesterday that the first blink, and by the way, you don't blink. You only blink if you're the one that's trying to enforce something. You brought that up when I came in.
Well, I saved the screenshot because I get notifications from all the different apps that I have for all the different sources, and here it is from 4:49 p.m. Here's the headline from the Fox News app: Canada blinks. Trump delays tariffs for at least 30 days. Now, I didn't read the story, but is Canada blinking?
Well, we had said yesterday that the first blink was when Trump put out the notice. It's the first time as president he ever put out the notice that tariffs can harm Americans.
Right.
But the harm is worth the results. That's the first time he's ever said that as president. He may have said it before sometime, but as president, I don't ever remember him stating that. It's always tariffs are wonderful, they're beautiful, and we said, well, that's not realistic. You're not being honest with the American people.
Here's what I want to know too. When Trudeau posted on X that we're listing the cartels as terrorists, to go along with what we talked about with the U.S. version of that, I was happy to see that the Secretary of State Marco Rubio is involved in these conversations, because you're going to have to mean it. But in order to mean it, it requires missions that are going to require the cooperation of Mexico. And now, you're not going to give those away to the public in any agreement that you come to. You're not going to divulge what's going to go on with, and I don't know how you carried that out. But there's going to have to be meaningful, as you mentioned, dismantling of those cartels. And are you going to trust the Mexican government to do that?
Canada's going to be no problem because Poilievre's going to be in there in a month.
Right.
And he agrees on the border stuff completely with Trump.
Yeah, I guess my question is, logistically, what does that mean? If you say, well, no, they're terrorists. Right. Well, okay, so what does that mean effectively?
Right. I mean, exactly. But it wasn't anything this was not this is an art of the deal thing that's just so incredible. This was saving face. There are some things that scared Trump. Number one, the reaction of the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
And I still believe one of them was down 1.5% even. What was it? I forgot which one. Wasn't the Dow?
Dow was down over 600 on opening.
No. I mean,
So,
even after
the
day-
NASDAQ
the
may
day
have
was
been
over,
down, yeah.
I think it was the NASDAQ that was down. I think it was the NASDAQ that was down.
By the way, I want to clarify. The cartels are terrorist groups, and I agree with what they're doing here. I just want there to be follow through, and
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I'm not doubting. I'm just saying we can't rely on the Mexican government to do the heavy lifting in dismantling the cartels.
No, and the 10,000 troops was like anybody in the know just went,
right.
yeah, right. I mean, it's like, but the face saving, the reason what I use as evidence is the stock market. That scared Trump the way that it went down. Trump's getting a tremendous amount of pressure from Republicans. Even the New York Times is saying Republicans aren't saying anything. You don't see massive support for Trump on the whole tariff thing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see it. Every single Republican that I've reached out to in the last couple of days, every one of them is against tariffs, but believe it should be used as a negotiating point. Last Friday, Trump said this is not a negotiating point. The tariffs are coming for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that what scared him was a reaction of the stock market, and also, and this isn't talked about enough, how the dollar went up. It was interesting because I saw Trump surrogates. It's amazing how many people don't understand about a strong and a weak dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the dollar gained strength, and the peso went down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, see, we're winning. Trump wants the opposite. And the problem is tariffs do the opposite. Trump wants a weak dollar because a weak dollar means Americans will buy fewer imports. He wants a strong dollar. Excuse me. He wants a weak dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And what you get is a strong dollar when you put tariffs in. The combination of all of those and the pressure coming from Republicans, because a number of articles have been written where the DNC right now is looking and saying, we believe this is what, and Fox News had a story on it the other day. The weak spot with Trump is the fact that he promised, and they laid out where he promised prices will be working to get prices down on day one. And then it was like the first week when Democrats were pounding, they were doing that for a reason because they're going to use that against him. The Democrats absolutely, even though they're coming out against the tariffs, they want Trump to put massive tariffs on because they believe, number one, that the border problem has already been solved in the American people's minds because so few are crossing already. That's been taken care of. What's next? Prices. And that's the fact. That's what's scaring Republicans right now. And Democrats, Fox News had the story the other day, the Democrats are saying this is where we're going to get Trump because what he wants to do is not going to lower prices. You and I have said it to begin with. You're not going to, you're really not going to lower them. Trump came out after the campaign and said that also. Well, it's going to be tough to lower the prices, but they have him on record saying, I'm going to lower it, and they're going to use that in the midterms like crazy. And so that's the other thing is, what is the goal of the tariffs? It's not a negotiating point. They said that on Friday. They said the tariffs are coming, but
it's protectionist policy. But that's the only design.
But every single Republican that I talked to, I sent this to what Trump put out on Sunday night. And Trump put this out Sunday night. Here we go. Anybody who was against tariffs, including the fake news Wall Street Journal and hedge funds, is only against tariffs because these people or entities are controlled by China or other foreign or domestic companies. Anybody that loves and believes in the United States of America is in favor of tariffs. They should have never ended in favor of the income tax system in 1913. The response to tariffs have been fantastic. And so you have all these Trump surrogates out there saying, well, this is only every single Republican that I talked to, Eric, every single one. And it's been over the past 3 or 4 days, like 10 of them. Every single one, well, there's just a deal thing. Well, no, I'm for free markets. No, I'm for free markets. Every one, I sent that to them.
Yeah.
And the response was, I guess I'm controlled by China. They all chuckled it off. That's just Trump saying that. But it sends the message to the United States and the world that this isn't about negotiating over the borders. And that's the huge problem. By the way, just to get things straight, and we talked about this the other day, the history of the income tax. The first income tax was not 1913. The first income tax was 1862. They needed to raise money for the Civil War. Now, it was found unconstitutional in 1872, but then they came back in 1894 and put it in again. And one of the reasons was, there's a couple of reasons. America, for a significant period of time, 90% in the late, let me see here, from 1868 until 1913, where did 90% of the revenue come from in the United States? Where did 90% of the revenue come from? Anybody know?
Anyone?
Anyone?
Bueller?
It fits. Because what was he talking about? Tariffs. 90% of the revenue for the federal government came from taxes on liquor, beer, wine, and tobacco. The other 10% mostly came from tariffs and selling land, because the federal government owned all the land, and they were land deals is what the federal government was making money. The land deals were ended because we got to the Pacific.
Yeah.
And then, as we know, in 1920, but they knew, the prohibition may be coming because they had talked about it, but 90% of the revenue. So the thing is, Trump is implying that the majority of revenue came from tariffs, and it didn't. And the reason they got rid of tariffs is because they couldn't raise any money, and the government was looking at it and saying, we need to tax the people that actually make money, not the poor, and the tariffs tax the poor, and income tax, we will tax the rich to pay for it, and the poor will not be able to, the poor won't be burdened on that. And so that's really how it came around. And we had said that because Trump came out a little over a week ago and said that we need to replace the federal income tax with tariffs. Impossible. That can't happen. Will never happen. It just, you'd have to put massive 150, 200% tariffs on everything that comes in. And you're like, well, yeah, but that's okay because there's no income tax. Well, 50% of the bottom half doesn't pay any income tax of wage earners.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason that they got rid of the tariffs. One of the reasons is because they view that as a tax on the poor.
By the way, while he was trashing Wall Street Journal, Rupert Murdoch was sitting right next to him.
Really?
Yes. True story. He was sitting right there in the Oval Office with him.
Wow. 866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. And so, yeah, looking at the history of the income tax versus tariffs, tariffs couldn't even back then, and as we stated over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about this because I think people need to have an understanding of why we went from a tariff tax to an income tax. Mm-hmm. And it's because tariffs couldn't even cover 10% of a federal budget back then.
Right.
That was only 2% of GDP.
Right.
Now we're 25% of GDP. And then what happened is, as I said, 90% from 1868 till 1913, 90% of all revenue for the federal government came from taxes on liquor, beer, wine, and tobacco. It shows you how small the federal government actually was.
And how much we used to smoke and drink.
That's true. And then when they went into World War I, they knew they had to raise revenue. So the income tax came in, and then Prohibition, when that started was it 1919? Then they even had to get more revenue, so they increased, and that's how the income tax became part of where we are today. They needed more revenue as the federal government expanded, and tariffs didn't cover hardly any of the cost of government.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. Just so you know, you can find all that information on the income tax and how we tax in this nation right from the IRS website.
Yeah.
So if you wonder where that information comes from, the IRS has had that out for years. I mean, it's the history of the IRS and how income tax came to be. And so when the president's talking about, he's implying the tariffs funded the entire federal government, and we need to go back to that. And they didn't. And it's easy to check. And that's the problem, that when he put out his Truth Social, he's not explaining to the American people the economics of tariffs and justifying it that way. He's playing, in my opinion, a Democrat game. If you don't agree with me, you're a Nazi. But in this case, you're not a Nazi. You're a China lover, and you're controlled by China. Well, that isn't true. You're not controlled by China. I'm not controlled by China.
And he was talking about the Wall Street Journal, too. And the guy that actually controls the Wall Street Journal was sitting right next to him.
And as we've said before, he's attacking some of the media that may disagree with him on a few issues, especially economic issues. Or for the Wall Street Journal, I think the thing that's always got Trump is they believe in what do you call it, amnesty.
Right. Yeah.
In some form of amnesty.
Right.
But they both agree that we need a lot more legal immigration. They agree. The thing that's weird about that is Trump is attacking media that probably agrees with him 90% of the time.
Right.
And are very issue-based.
Right, yeah.
If you read the Wall Street Journal, especially because he's talking about the editorial page, which is more conservative.
Yeah.
And then National Review. I always don't agree with the writers of National Review, but they are probably, on whole, extremely conservative and are very issue-based. They're not based on really any type of partisanship or party. It's ideologically what they believe, and they talk a lot about economics. But I think Trump, by attacking people, I don't think there were two more passionate backers of Trump based on law when it came to lawfare than those two publications, as we said yesterday.
And the editorial page and staff in 2020 was, really trying to, give advice to him, saying, hey, you need to focus more on your accomplishments, focus more on and then they listed the accomplishments. You need to promote the things you've done that have worked and all these things that are, that you're doing that are good things. And, the editorial page has been mostly pro-Trump. I mean, few exceptions, like you said, 90%, but
yeah,
if you're looking for any media to be 100%, that's not going to happen.
Well, you're not. Yeah, you're not going to get it. But again, we don't know what the end game is from Trump. And like I said, people are coming to their own conclusion. What I found yesterday is people are taking 1/8 of the story, and that's what they promote.
Yeah.
I saw that
Well,
a lot.
yeah, there's
yesterday.
a lot of cherry picking.
Right. There's a ton of cherry picking, and we
Right,
don't
yeah.
cherry pick. We look at the entire thing. It's like, Trump won. Trump won. It's like, what did he win? Trump had them blink. How? He left this out. He left this out. Oh, by the way, with Canada, the vast majority of that legislation was already passed. They simply said, we're going to do what we already were going to do, even if we weren't negotiating with you. So we're negotiating with you, something we've already done, except things that are more superficial, like naming people to a particular position or labeling something different.
Right. Yeah.
Which, again, is, and we knew this would happen. We said this yesterday. I thought it might be a week. I said under a week.
Mm-hmm.
It was a day, because there is a tremendous amount, and this isn't being talked about, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on the White House from conservatives and Republicans. That's why they're quiet. If Republicans are quiet, that means they're not for it.
Right.
What's going on now? They're against the cartels. They're against the fentanyl, but the Republicans in Congress are not pro-tariff, and that's why there's why you don't see this vocal support coming out for it. But the president, by putting out the Truth Social on Sunday afternoon, that said, anyone that loves and believes in the United States of America is in favor of tariffs, and they should have never ended in favor of the income tax system. He doesn't know what actually happened at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because tariffs did not support anything close to the majority of the government. It was taxes on tobacco, alcohol, the income tax that was put in that was found unconstitutional but helped pay off the Civil War, and then 90% between 1868 and 1913, 90% of what funded the government was taxes on alcohol and tobacco.
Yeah.
The other 10%, the majority of that, was land purchases and tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
So he's attempting to put out the opinion that tariffs covered the majority of it. We need to go back to that great time when everything was great. And that's why when he said it a couple of weeks ago, the tariffs should replace the income tax, and we said, impossible. You can't raise that amount in tariffs.
Right.
You just can't, and then you end up taxing the poor. Then when you look at the philosophy back then for adding the income tax, the philosophy was we need to tax people that are actually making money.
Mm-hmm.
We're taxing a ton of people. Tariffs are taxing people. It's taxing the bottom, now right now, tariffs would tax the bottom 50% who would not get an income tax break because they don't pay any income taxes.
Right.
And that's why it would be so tough to get that through Congress, is because, and an example, one of the reasons you cannot get the flat tax passed is because it starts hitting the lower incomes.
We talked about this, whether, the flat tax, national sales tax, and all these things where it's like, okay, and the argument on the national sales tax, well, people who make money illegitimately, criminals and everything else, if they bought something, they would, this means they would have to pay taxes because they don't pay income taxes. All right, we can have that conversation. I think there would be an expansion of the black market for some items, but, all right, then you have to have the conversation about the lower 50 that don't pay an income tax. They pay the FICA tax. They don't pay the income tax. So at that point, then, if you look at it, well, one of the things for Trump, we want to stop taxing Social Security. And in fact, you've become part of a lobbying group that is only one person. But you're hoping it'll get done before October 1st.
That's the only bill that I want passed.
Right. It's because you're working in the spirit of helping others. And by others we mean you.
Me, exactly.
But so if you take that, right, we want to stop taxing Social Security, which I think is great. The older I get, I think it's even better. But it's but the problem is then, okay, if you get in with the idea of tariffs replacing taxes, the income tax, And then on the bigger picture, forget about us older folks. The lower 50, those that don't pay an income tax, that don't earn enough money to pay an income tax, you're going to now start taxing them. And then the response will have to be, in order to get it passed, well, you got to put in a mechanism that gives them an exemption on tariffs. Wait a minute. How's that going to work?
Yeah, how do you do that? Yeah.
Because, on the national sales tax.
That's why Josh Hawley is trying to expand the child tax credit.
Exactly. So then, same thing on the national sales tax, right? So what would it be? Like, you would get a special card that when if it were the national, we went to a national sales tax. You go in and then you show them your card as they ring up everything, and then it credits you the national sales tax right then and there. Because you don't want people to have to wait until April next year to get their refund on all the national sales tax they paid. These are people that aren't paying taxes right now, right? Well, you don't want that to be the case, because prices would go through the roof. That kind of instant pain and constant pain. You want that money coming to them, well, at least on the regular. Well, that would mean maybe once a month they get a check, or they have a card that exempts them at checkout if we were doing a national sales tax or a tariff. Politically, I'm telling you where it's going. We can have the conversation of, well, everybody, people have said this, the debate, well, everybody should pay 10%, just 10% across the board, but everybody pays 10%. We can have that conversation. That's not where we are politically as a nation.
No.
And you're not going to get that passed in our lifetime. But if you started down this road, you're going to have to give exemption to the people that have the exemption right now. And as you mentioned, you already have Republicans right now that are pushing. And Marco Rubio, the current Secretary of State, was one of those as a senator, along with Mike Lee, who pushed for and got a higher child tax credit, fully refundable child tax credit. Both of those guys, Republicans. So Republicans are on board with giving, as we'd call it, that whole child tax credit. If you're getting more back than you paid in,
they're willing to make,
then that is welfare.
Yeah, they're willing to make the tax system a welfare system.
And so when you put all this together, you don't have the political climate to get that done. It's not going to happen.
No.
And the conversation keeps going on it.
Well,
it just isn't going to happen politically.
And the thing
in our
is,
lifetime.
And a friend of the show was, yesterday said all Republicans and all conservatives are against tariffs. I'm like, well, actually, they're not. The populist portion, there's a new populist entity coming in that is pro tariffs.
Yeah.
But when you look here, and this is somebody who was saying, look, I'm totally against tariffs, but this is a negotiating point. Well, the point I'm trying to bring out, and this is not us. I love it how people get angry at us when we quote the president or read verbatim what he says, and they're furious at us. Yeah, and it's like, why are you mad at me? I'm just reading what he says. That's what we do. We observe and we report.
Right.
And then we give our opinion on it. It's that simple. But the president here, with that Truth Social on Sunday night, where he says anybody that's against tariffs, including the fake news Wall Street Journal and hedge funds, is only against them because these people or entities are controlled by China or other foreign or domestic companies. Anyone that loves and believes in the United States of America is in favor of tariffs. They should have never ended in favor of the income tax system in 1913. By writing that, number one, he's wrong. He's implying that tariffs is what covered the entire federal budget, and they didn't. Mm-hmm. They covered way less than 10% of the federal budget. And remember, the federal government was only 2% of GDP, and now it's 25% of GDP. So he's wrong there. But then his argument for tariffs is not explaining the economics of it as we would do. What he says is, if you don't agree with him, you're a traitor to China.
Yeah. Right.
It's not a way to sell something to Republicans.
Right. Yeah.
He's not going to run for office again.
Right. And many of them, if not the overwhelming majority of them, will be. Yes. They want to either run in the House, they're going to have to run at the midterm, and then in 28 and the senators are all as far as I know, very few are stepping down. You're going to have to get, again, it's consensus building, and this one really just was scattered. It really was.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
Red Eye Radio, he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just so you know, because I told you where I got the information that you can look up yourself on the IRS about the income tax, and the tariffs did not pay even close to anything before 1913 of what the budget was. 90% was alcohol and tobacco taxes, and the rest were tariffs and the last 10% tariffs and selling land, as the federal government was doing back then.
Right.
Then they ran out of land.
Yeah.
But when I talked about the fact that we talked about the fact that Trump really didn't get anything from Canada, they already had passed these laws. Where did we get it from? The December 17th news release from the Government of Canada. Government of Canada announces its plan to strengthen border security, directing and disrupting the fentanyl trade, introducing significant new tools for law enforcement, enhancing operational coordination between Canada and the United States. And then January 15th, an appendage to that of everything that you saw that Trump actually put what Canada's going to do, except labeling the fentanyl, the cartels as terrorists,
right,
and appointing the drug czar.
Right.
Everything else they already passed.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome, good morning, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so all the information that we related to you last hour came from the history of tariffs in the United States and how much of the economy it actually supported versus other taxes, especially the taxes on alcohol and tobacco came from the IRS, and everything where we said, look, Trump didn't really get anything from the Canadians because it was everything that the legislature already passed. We got from the press releases on those days from the Canadian government, because that's what was going on. If you pay attention to the Canadian media, that's what they were saying. Well, we just gave Trump what we already did ourselves, except for the czar, which again, you have Trudeau in there for another month, and it looks like Poilievre's going to be in there, and Poilievre agrees completely with the president. Interesting, Poilievre did a thing yesterday, I was watching it yesterday, where he talked about the fact that it is harder for the provinces to trade with each other than it is for Canada to trade with other countries, that the provinces put trade barriers up. He said, forget about other countries. We're our biggest enemy.
But, if you're Alberta, you may not want the stuff from the other guys. I'm not an expert, but that's absolutely ridiculous. But that comes from liberal policy, And
I want to just address a couple of emails that I received. Where'd it go here?
All right.
Robert, I think said, because I'd said earlier what the Democrats are attempting to do. The Democrats are attempting to look at the president when he said, "I will bring down prices on day one," and I'm getting some flack here. One person wrote to me and said, no, he said, when I bring down energy prices, I'll bring it down. No, that's incorrect. In August of 2024, remember when he stood in front of all the groceries?
Mm-hmm.
Remember he had, the packaged foods, meats, produce all around him, and it was like, whoa. And we thought it was a great press conference. He said, quote, when I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one, end of quote.
Yeah.
So that's it. Look, I understood. I wasn't expecting prices to come down. This isn't my criticism of him.
Well,
this is the politics of what the Democrats believe they have with him. So they are publicly coming out against the tariffs, but Democrats have always been for tariffs, but they are praying for the tariffs because they believe it will drive up prices, and that's what they want.
I think it was Washington Examiner. I got to get the headline. Let's see if I can go to their X page that posted the headline, and it was basically the problem with this being a one-person solution. Trump being in control of, all right, I'm going to sign it, boom, here's the tariffs, is that same one person gets the blame. If it comes back, it's coming back. And
we said that yesterday.
And that was Washington Examiner.
Yeah.
And it's, and politically, that's how it goes. Trump knows this. There's a reason there's a pause. There's a reason they're having the conversation. And, could be just like the USMCA. Hey, great accomplishment. All right, that's great. Have your parade. I mean, it didn't change much. But, all right, politically, it's not going to be damaging to you. If they come away with this, I almost said this on the air because I actually had this conversation with my dad this past weekend. Actually, it was on a phone call before I went to see him. We had an hour-long talk show on the phone the day before I went to see him. And we were talking about the tariff thing because on Friday, there was a lot of news about the tariffs, and he was talking a lot. The president was on tariffs and everything. And I said, it could be where it ends that the victory is, and I mentioned the USMCA thing. I said that the victory lap is about, look, we put all these things in place to greatly control the fentanyl thing. It's cherry picking your win because you can't measure the success of that effectively of controlling it, maybe ever. I hope they do. It's tragic what's going on with fentanyl. It's scary. I have family members, I have friends in law enforcement, and it is absolutely scary to watch what's going on with fentanyl. So effectively, if they get things done, and I really hope they do, then that's going to be great. My concern is, all right, where do you measure? I guess the measurement would be if there is a drop, and I really hope it goes away completely, but a drop in the fentanyl deaths. If you start to see, well, there are fewer fentanyl deaths and everything else, that's real progress, and that's a win. All day, that's a win. I don't know if that's going to be the victory lap. I don't know if that's going to be where this ends because it's scattered. One day it's not a threat. They're going to be in place, and they're going to be in place for a long time. And then by, mid-morning, 10 a.m. Monday. I was seeing it at 10 a.m. But first thing Monday morning, Trump and the Mexican president were on the phone, and they were walking through this 30-day, which, by the way, the stories later in the day said at least 30 days. So we'll see where it goes with both Canada and Mexico. We don't know. The thing is, I don't know. Look, they believe, Canada believes Trump is serious on tariffs or would use them. The question is, if you're using it only to negotiate something, then the threat has to be real.
Right, but they made it clear.
It's a poker game.
But again, as you say, it changes every day.
Right.
This reminds me of things, where Trump would take. 3 or 4 positions on one issue, and people would focus on the one position and leave out all the rest. Friday, Trump said that no, the administration said no, this isn't a negotiating point for fentanyl. Tariffs are coming across the board for all countries. It's what he has said he was going to run on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and like I said, that's why every single Republican that I know, we're saying, well, we're okay with it for a negotiating point. And you and I've said, I'm okay, for example, with, I think the plan all along should have been in his first term, you isolate China. You isolate China, you bring India in. Remember when he went to India and was so popular?
Yep.
He was looking at India to replace a lot of China stuff.
Namaste Trump rally was huge.
And we thought that was wonderful that you sit there and you say, you find out who your adversaries are.
Yep.
And your adversaries, if you look at your big adversaries, it would be in the Middle East. It would be where Al-Qaeda and ISIS still have remnants. And it would be Russia. It would be China. And it would be North Korea. And probably also you'd look at Venezuela. And what you would try to do is, I'm just throwing that out as, a hypothetical back then. And then you would say, okay, the free world, we all band together and we trade and we ice them out.
Right. Yeah.
That, I think, would have been the correct way to do it. But what you have here, and the other email was, well, look, I'm really, just another one of the listeners just wrote me, very wary about, tariffs, but, the fentanyl thing's got to go. Well, the president has said already last Friday, it's not about the fentanyl. Tariffs are coming for everyone. And I know people get angry at us for repeating what the president says. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to appease you if you're angry about that. I'm not the president. I'm not saying the things that he is saying. He is saying them. And when he writes in Truth Social that if you're not, and you notice how quiet, and the media's picking up now, how basically almost all Republicans are quiet on it. Nobody wants to join him on this. They're deathly afraid of inflation and higher prices and not being able to bring prices down. They look at it and say, we're doing this before. This is one of the criticisms that actually came out from the Republicans. We're doing this before we did any pro-growth stuff. We're doing anti-growth stuff first. And then we don't know when we're going to be able to get the whole tax plan, which is pro-growth. We can't be doing this. This is just, these are the things that are really going on. We're observing them. That's it. And we're not the ones that said, if you don't believe in tariffs, you're a traitor to China. Trump said that. And probably the majority of the members of the Republican Party in Congress are anti-tariff.
Now, I'd say the tariffs on China right now aren't the ones that bother me.
No, neither do, yeah.
And
me neither, because of how they operate.
Because the Trump tariffs from before are in place right now from his first term, and it ranges, but it goes up to 25%, depending on the items, and those are still on. And now, as of right now, the 10% blanket tariff that on top of that is in place on all goods. But
because the question that I would ask any Republican out there who has been saying, well, no, I want it for a negotiating point. Tariffs are good to negotiate to get what you want. Well, Trump made it clear last week, this is not about a negotiating point on fentanyl. It's about tariffs across the board.
I don't know.
And if you're not for him, all you Republicans who are loyal Trump supporters, he just let you know that China controls you, that you are a traitor to the United States. That's not how to win over people to your economic argument.
Here's the thing. I don't know that it's by design, but his unpredictable nature, if you're sitting across the table, is one of those things where I really don't know if he's serious or is going to come back or tomorrow, boom. Because I look at the steel tariffs, right? That was made on the fly. That happened. I mean, I know he was planning it, but nobody saw that coming. And he was talking to steel workers that day, and that's when he announced it. And everybody was like, what? Where did that come from? Now it was promising tariffs as a campaign promise, right? But then all of the back and forth, and again, I don't know what's by design on his part and what isn't, but it creates a highly predictable nature as your adversary in terms of negotiating. So if you're Canada, if you're any other nation, and you're sitting across from him, you don't know where he's going with it. You know that.
Well, we know this.
You know that the pain is going to be inflicted, but the question is, what's he going to do, and how long is it going to last?
Right. Well, but the one I saw this yesterday where, Trump wins because Canada's GDP is smaller. Somebody sent me that. It doesn't matter. Trump is saying he wants tariffs against everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to be affected by it. If you just pick and choose the battle going on right now, you would have a point that the tariffs would hurt Canada more than the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take Canada, China, Mexico, Europe, it's a completely different ballgame.
Here's what I wonder, too. So Trudeau and the president of Mexico both saying in their statements, the talks were good, and we're going to be talking over the next 30 days. Because if it's me and I'm having to deal, I'm running a country and I'm having to deal with Trump, your ultimate question is what? It's like,
what's your end game? What do you want from us?
It's like Independence Day, the movie. What do you want? What do you want?
Yeah, but again, last Friday he said it's not about fentanyl.
Well, that's the thing.
Tariffs are going on everybody, no matter what you do, unless you agree to tariffs.
Exactly.
We're going to put tariffs on you.
We're at the table now. What are we talking here? Are we renegotiating USMCA? What is your goal? What do you want? What is your list? Right. The things coming out from
by the way,
Canada,
that was coming out yesterday.
And Mexico.
Is he admitting that he failed on USMCA? What's going on?
Well, I didn't see anybody ask that question did they have a press briefing yesterday? I don't know if they had a
No, I saw that in the media.
I know, but I was wondering if somebody would bring it up in the next press briefing, because it has to be a question. Because if you're starting with Canada and Mexico and China, well, Canada and Mexico is the concern. Wait a minute. Hold on. Are we renegotiating USMCA? You're going to scrap it and do something brand new?
There's been no talk on that at all.
Well, and here's the other thing, too. The story came out about the incoming administration in the first couple of days started an investigation to see if China was complying with the trade agreement that was put in place in 2020 under Trump. In other words, were they complying during the Biden years? Does Trump have reason to believe that Mexico and Canada weren't and China wasn't? I didn't see anybody ask that question.
Well, he hasn't made that statement.
I haven't seen him do that.
Yeah.
But again, these are things I'd be asking him directly.
That would be a strong statement.
Yes.
That would be a statement that would help him. And that's the point. He's not making economic arguments to do it. He's basically calling you a traitor to China if you don't agree with tariffs.
If Biden was letting them get away with being non-compliant on trade agreements, you need to point that out.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Let's go to Nick in Clearwater, Florida. Nick, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Hey.
I've been listening to you guys for about an hour right now, and believe me, this is a conversation that we MAGA people have been having now for a few days, and I think the consensus is that we have a tentative hold right now. Our margins in both houses are not that great, and the economy really hasn't gotten that much better. But you have to understand it's only been a little bit more than 2 weeks. I think these shots across the bow would have been a lot more accepted and less one-sided if our economy was a little bit better. Maybe after the midterms, after we see the recession come down, after we see prices go down, if we had a better stronghold on the nation, I think and it is a bargaining chip. I mean, this has nothing to do with fentanyl. And MAGA people across this state know it's not about fentanyl. Trump couldn't care. He just couldn't care about fentanyl. And a lot of the Republicans here, especially the MAGA people, we don't care a whit about fentanyl. We care about gas prices, we care about grocery, and we care about security. And it has nothing to do with fentanyl. But we were all worried about the tariffs. We didn't really like it. We didn't want to talk about it that much outside our immediate circles. And it was just too much, too quick, and we didn't really get that much done yet. I mean, there's a lot of presidential actions that are going on right now, but it's window dressing. We haven't really done anything to change the lives of the American people yet. We have a lot of excitement. We have a lot of braggadocio. We have a lot of gotchas out there, but we don't really have any meat and potatoes that affect that conversation that families have, at 2:00 in the morning around the kitchen table with a checkbook.
Thank you, Nick. We appreciate it, and we'll respond to that coming up. Thank you.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning and welcome. Responding to, it was Nick, right? Nick in Clearwater?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Interesting, he makes the point that he's a Republican and a MAGA Republican, so supporter of Trump. And you can look at it and say there are people that are lukewarm Republican, or there may be strong Republicans, but lukewarm on Trump. But his point was the people that he deals with and his friends, whatever, that are MAGA in Florida, are still waiting. And I think the point he was trying to make is, you really don't get anywhere unless you start getting the legislation. They still don't view that much has been done yet, and everything that's going on right now, even the executive orders and DOJ and all that, is around the edges. Is that what you got? More around the edges.
Yeah.
And did he say show?
Who?
The Nick.
Oh.
Like.
Did he say?
Was it show that he used? I forgot the term that he used to talk about so far, because nothing's been put in legislation yet. And so unless you get legislation, you really haven't done anything if you've got the presidency and Congress. And that's what you need to do. And the pro-growth stuff isn't there yet. We haven't seen the economy improve because it's only been 2 weeks. So they're still waiting, and they view everything as just sort of. Now, one thing I will disagree on, most conservatives I meet are concerned with fentanyl.
It's a massive problem. It's a massive problem, especially and your governor in Florida is greatly concerned with fentanyl, as are a lot of the southern states. Every state now is a border state, and every state is impacted by fentanyl. And if you're saying it's not your priority, that it doesn't affect you directly, that's one thing. But conservatives and Republicans are greatly concerned about it because it's happening in this weird invisible thing. You remember when the heroin back in the day was showing up on the streets, and some of it had actually branding. They were selling drugs that had its own branding in the envelope or whatever. It was visible in the news. Fentanyl is out there. The story is out there, but the drug itself is getting into other drugs. I don't know how many stories. My nephew's a cop, and they had an individual in the town where he works as a police officer, and this person smoked marijuana, had fentanyl in it, and the coroner suspected that the person didn't know there was fentanyl in the marijuana.
Well,
and so it's coming across in so many ways. It really is almost, it to me, looks like those who are sending it across want people to die. And I know, well, no, that's their customer, and you can, and in fact, they in the police field, they talk about, well, they'll lace marijuana with fentanyl in order to make it more addictive, and your customers come back for your marijuana, and you brand it that way. Whatever the intent is, it's deadly, and it is a great concern. It's scary as hell as a parent and grandparent.
And I would disagree with you. Every indication is Trump does care about it. It is a border issue, so I would disagree. I think
with
Trump,
the caller, you mean?
Yeah, with the caller.
Yeah,
that I do think Trump does view it as a very important issue because it is a border issue. Look, one of the things that they did, and again, I don't think anything was won yesterday by either side. I believe it was saving face. And one of the reasons, I don't believe even Trump believes that sending 10,000 Mexican troops down to the border is going to do anything to stop anything, is because what they put in that in the write-up that they sent to Mexico, one of the major things was the cartels are intertwined with your government. And Mexico's furious at that. But it's the truth. And you don't have to take Trump's word for it. You can read the New York Times. The New York Times has done articles on it. Liberal papers have done on it, saying, okay, it may not be an official contract that you sign, but the payoffs and everything are just massive, and the intimidation. And it said Mexico fought a war. Somebody wrote it yesterday. Mexico fought a war against the cartels and lost. Now, they didn't sign like a surrender agreement, but the fact is, yeah, there is that belief. And unless you can solve that, which is, I don't know how the hell you solve that. I have no idea. Unless the Mexican government said, okay, the United States can come in with your military and our military, and we'll take down the cartels together. I can't see that happening under a Trump administration.
I don't see that happening. I would love anybody and everybody to be able to take the cartels down. I just don't know strategically how you do that. Deeming them as terrorists is one thing. Listing them officially as terrorists is one thing, and there are things you can do in that regard. But dismantling them is very different. The Mexican government, for those that are on the take, and it's been this way for quite some time when it comes to the cartels. This is how it works. You're either on the take, you're either on there, if you're in the government or, and there are very few exceptions to this rule, that if you're on the take, you did that because the other choice is they take you out. You either get on the payroll and get on and do what we say, or we take you out. This is who the cartels are. That's what you're dealing with. And I have confidence that we have the power and the equipment and the manpower to do something like that. But logistically, how do you get that done? And I don't have the answer to that question.
You saw the story yesterday. It's the top story at Fox News. Mexican cartel chiefs order members to target U.S. Border Patrol with drones and explosives.
Right.
By doing that and that getting out, they're testing Trump.
Yes.
The other
they
thing
want to know how far he's going to go.
The other thing, too, is, the whole thing, well, Canada and Mexico blinked. You and I said yesterday, we said, actually, the first blink came from Trump. And that's when he said, because he never admitted before as president, the tariffs cause harm. And now they know it. Now, because you were talking about people still don't know where he's going. We don't know what Trump wants with the tariffs. Nobody knows. As soon as you say, well, it's just a negotiating point for fentanyl, he tells you last Friday, it's not a negotiating point for fentanyl. Tariffs are coming across the board.
Right.
So you don't really know where he's going with it. But by letting that out, that he said, yeah, Americans could be hurt by this, that was massive, because the negotiating before was like, I'm not afraid of tariffs whatsoever because they're not going to hurt our country at all. And you believed it. Many people believed it and said, no, Trump says it's only going to be positive. Tariffs won't hurt us at all. For him to say that just weakened his negotiating stance with Mexico and Canada, because they're like, he knows he's going to get hurt. And he knows, and we know inflation, and we know it won the U.S. election. It was the border. And really, the fentanyl's still a problem, but you look at how quickly, the encounters are at the border now. What was it last week? It was down to like 200 encounters, something like that, 200, 250.
Yeah.
And that's a week ago.
Right.
And people look at it and go, Homan's done a great job. And then people say the border's been solved. What's the next thing? Prices. And that's why I said that the Fox had the article about Democrats saying, okay, we got the president on tape, on video, saying starting day one, prices are going to be coming down. And I know I got that email from the one person who said, no, he said when gasoline prices start coming down, prices will come down. Yes, he also said that, but they're only looking for when he made absolutes. And that's why the first week they're like, eggs are going up in price. And Republicans went, he's only been in office 3 days. Yeah, but he said he's going to lower him from day one. And so we knew that wasn't going to happen. We knew that was, political rhetoric.
Yeah, because on things like that, it doesn't.
Right.
The left really doesn't have much leverage there. They'll try and use it.
Well,
but on tariffs,
right?
When you can point directly at it, that's what they're going to.
6 months, a year down the road, going into the midterm, and that's what the article was on Fox News. That's what they're looking for, and they believe that that's a weak spot. Now, the last caller was saying there's still so much to be done, and that's why Republicans are worried. Republicans are worried. One of the reasons Republicans are worried is because they wanted the pro-growth stuff first. Before you do tariffs, you don't sit there in an economy which still has not solved the inflation problem. The inflation problem has not been settled. Layoffs, we've seen layoffs in many companies are up. Economic growth is hanging, 2.3% for the last quarter? And indications aren't necessarily positive, all coming from the Biden administration. And then it's like the first thing you're throwing out is tariffs. Republicans are like, we want pro-growth before you start raising prices and tick off everybody.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what Republicans are thinking. That's why, and you saw the number of articles yesterday written on it, why are Republicans in Congress so quiet on all of this?
Yeah. I mean,
and there's a reason.
You can't jump in again like the Washington Examiner. When it's a one-man game, well, that same one man gets the blame if it comes back. And if you're in the GOP right now, until you get to a point of, we don't know if they'll ever get to this point or if that's the goal, but if you're renegotiating USMCA, until you do that, you're not going to get much out of Republicans, out of the GOP on Capitol Hill right now. They don't want to jump in.
Let's go to Cecil in Nashville. Cecil, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show.
How you doing? I listen to y'all every night. I'm a truck driver. I enjoy talking to y'all, but you kind of made my skin cringe a little bit when you was talking about comparing the tariffs back when they were first implemented, comparing it to now. First of all, the government wasn't as big as it is right now. Trump specifically said when he came in that he was going to shrink the size of government. Tariffs at that particular time were they had the tariffs that they had at that particular point in time. You know what I'm saying? You got to look at the wealth of the other countries. They didn't have the wealth that they got right now, the technology they got right now. So we're doing a lot.
Cecil, if we have, because because we did this last week. We went through the numbers when Trump said, I want to replace the federal income tax with tariffs. We took the entire thing that Trump has said that he wanted, number one, the 25% tariff across the board on all imports coming in from every country in the world. It would not even pay 1/2 of the interest on the debt that we have every year. If he had a 25% tariff on everybody in the world and a 40% or 50% tariff like he wanted on China on all the products coming in, it still wouldn't be, it would be a little over half of just the interest on the debt. You don't get to the debt. You don't get to paying 1 cent for anything in the federal budget based on tariffs. And that's why we said tariffs. And remember, I didn't make the case. Trump made the case that tariffs paid the freight back in 1913, that before 1913, tariffs did not pay the freight. Alcohol taxes did, and land sales did. Tariffs were less than 10% of the overall budget in a very small federal government back then. So I don't know how we made your skin do whatever, because nothing that we have said has been inaccurate at all. And we already looked at how much tariffs could raise if you maximize what Trump said he wanted to do.
Did you take in consideration the decrease in the size of government and all the wasteful spending that's taking place? Did you take that in consideration too?
Well, yeah, but you're not going to. Yeah, but you're not going to take it down to that size. We would love that. We would love to see a very small centralized government. That's not going to happen. I mean, there's going to be a lot of fat that is trimmed here, no doubt, but it's not going to get back to where we were.
So tariffs can't pay.
I appreciate you for explaining that to me. I understand now what you're saying.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cecil.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Cecil, hang on. We'll give you some of the figures here because just preliminary figures. You can figure out, for example, as we did last week, why tariffs, couldn't do it. And we took the 25%. I just did it again. The 25. If Trump put 25% tariffs on every single country in the world coming in, not just Canada, Mexico, and China, but European Union, Asia, and everything, 25% would raise $875 billion. The interest on the debt is 1.2. We don't start paying for $1 of anything that we actually spend for services for the American people with a 25% tariff.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Cecil, who called us earlier because we were talking about just the whole concept of tariffs and looking at the history of tariffs, and the fact that tariffs did not pay for didn't even come close to paying for the federal budget prior to 1913, and that seems to be almost like a tariff legend. That tariffs, just put the tariffs in and everything would be fine. And as we brought you earlier, all from you can find this all on the IRS website. We first had an income tax in 1862 to help support the Civil War. Then that was found unconstitutional a few years later. From 1868 until 1913, 90% of federal revenues came from alcohol and tobacco taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The rest, 10% left, came from land sales, tariffs, and whatever. So even back then, when you were running, not during the Civil War, but after the Civil War, during the Civil War, spending as relation to the GDP went up, of course, to fund the Civil War. But after it was around 2%, 1.7, 1.8, 1.92%, all the way to 1913. Now the federal budget, as compared to the GDP, is 25%. But Cecil asked a good question. What if Doge works and they get to the maximum of, cutting $2 trillion a year? All right. There are 5 things that you have to spend money on. Now we're going to 2024 figures. It'll be up this year. But if you take Social Security, Medicare, prescription drugs, all part of Medicare. We're not even including Medicaid. This is just the things that have been promised to people that aren't going anywhere. You come to $3 trillion right there. What else? Defense. We're going to continue to support defense. That's going to go up. It's going to be a smaller part of the budget, but it's expected to be around $1 trillion for defense. That's $4 trillion. And then you've got the interest on the debt, which is expected to be $1.2 trillion. The federal budget for this year is expected to be $7.3 trillion. You're roughly to 5.2. So you take, that's your $2 trillion in cuts. But the only things that the federal government can fund is Social Security, Medicare, prescription drugs, defense, and interest on the debt. You would have to have tariffs of 150% to fund the government. 25% doesn't get you there. 50 doesn't get you there. 75 doesn't get you there. 100 doesn't get you there. 150 gets you there. So prices would go up, or the tariff on imports would be 150%. Now, immediately, you would not be able to raise that amount of money because the whole purpose of a tariff, and a tariff of that level, is to totally kill imports into your country. That's the problem that you have. And so in order to fund $7 trillion through tariffs, tariffs would have to be 200%, not just on Canada, China, and Mexico, on every country in the world, all the imports that come in from every single country. And just trying to give you some perspective on that and why it's never going to happen. Now, we are not going to cut $2 trillion off the budget. That's not happening. The federal government, not in our lifetime, not in your children's lifetime, is there going to be a federal government that only funds Social Security, Medicare, prescription drugs, and defense. Do you agree with me? You're sort of staring.
I'm trying to think of, I'm dreaming about a $2 trillion a year cut. Because I'm trying to think of where you even begin. I mean, politically, we're not going to see any cuts until programs just go away because we can no longer service the interest on the debt. I don't know when that's going to be.
No, you're right. That's when it will happen you're going to have to pay interest on the debt, Social Security, Medicare, and prescription drugs. and defense.
Mhm.
You're going to have to pay those.
Mhm.
Those are the things you have to pay.
And if I'm still alive when it happens, I'm going to be really old. And so a few of those really I'm going to need. That's the political landscape right now and has been for quite some time. There are only, and I'm guessing Cecil and a lot of our audience are in the same category as we are. We're fiscal conservatives. We want a smaller government. We want, man, I was also kind of daydreaming about, night dreaming maybe, about what I would do if I found out they actually were successful at cutting $2 trillion a year. I'd be dancing. There'd be a lot of dancing. Maybe some drinking.
I was going to say,
celebration.
Maybe you would have a drink with me.
I might even have a drink.
Shots.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden he puts the tariffs on alcohol. Dang it! But
that's okay.
Yeah,
we'll be drinking Kentucky whiskey.
Well,
we're not like Canada, where they, as Poliev said yesterday, we have more barriers to trade between provinces than we do with other countries.
Right.
There are no tariffs between states, so whiskey will always be there. And Eric, you can drink Bud Light.
No.
And Labatt's Blue Light is made in Rochester, New York now. So you could actually drink a Canadian beer.
Well, Maynard James Keenan has his own wine company, so I'll just order some wine from him. Lead singer of Tool, one of my favorite bands. So I'll just get some of his wine.
Or there's Rush wine.
I don't drink wine, but
there's Rush wine.
Yeah.
There's Rush. I saw it the other day.
Right.
Rush wine. And I don't mean Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
Rush wine. And then there's
Kix Brooks, remember, gave us some of his wine that I don't know if he still does that, but
does Trump still have his wine? Remember when Trump had his wine? Is that still out there, Trump wine?
Does he? He might.
Yeah, remember people were buying bottles of Trump wine?
Yeah. There's plenty of alcohol sources, never a shortage.
By the way, no tariffs on Trump wine.
Exactly.
But no,
because the thing is that, we're not going to. I mean, slowing the rate of growth of spending is an impossible task.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's frightening to think about it, because at some point we'll reach that threshold of not being able to service the debt or the interest on the debt. And when you can't service the interest on the debt, I don't know what that looks like. I mean, that's economically, globally, if that happens to the U.S., seriously, you better be in prep mode, because it would be catastrophic.
Yeah, you have to pay Social Security, Medicare, unless people say, we all hear, there's going to be a civil war. Well, not until you can't pay Social Security, Medicare, prescription drugs, defense, and interest on the debt.
Right. And part of that group of that civil war, the seniors will have a bunch of cannons. How do you work this thing? But it's not. I would love to. Again, I would and this is a great thing. We're having the debate about Doge and all the things that Doge is suggesting and making cuts and everything else. I will take. By the way, I might have a drink based on that. That the conversation is actually happening. Maybe not, but it's
but it's. I like the conversation of. We love talking. We've talked about this before. We love talking economics more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is like, okay, got to talk about it. It was interesting because when you think about what Trump did, like I said, it was historical.
Yeah.
But a lot of times politics. I mean, so the Trump stuff over the last couple of years was just unbelievable because it was historic. It will go down in the history books, and 200 years from now, people will be talking about, the comeback of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be something that will, be in there. And historians will look different than the mainstream media does on him. But when you look at the fact that we're having a discussion on, Trump coming out saying we need to do all tariffs. Well, then we can explain, and others can explain, can we raise that money and what would it cost to do that? And then you can talk about the history of tariffs.
Yeah.
And you can get rid of the rumors out there that tariffs supported the entire economy, which it did not. It didn't come close to doing it. It was taxes on alcohol and I'm going to say cigarettes, alcohol, tobacco, whatever. And then when the income tax came in, really, World War I was right there. They could not raise. They weren't raising the money anymore because they'd sold all the land. The land was sold in the Continental 48. Mm-hmm. It was gone, and tariffs wouldn't support it. And the view was that tariffs, when you think about it, you were taxing the opiate of the masses. You were.
Yeah.
You really were.
Yeah.
And there was fury that we need a different kind of tax to go after the rich people that are really, and you think about it, the billionaires that came from the 1850s on, Rockefellers and everything, Carnegie and you name it. And there was like, these guys need to be taxed. Mm-hmm. They need to, and that's how it came about. And as I said, one of the problems with bringing tariffs back is you would tax then the lower 50% of incomes that pay no taxes or actually get a credit. And they would get taxed, and they wouldn't get a reduction in income tax because they don't pay any.
Right. Yeah.
That's the problem. So those are just all the challenges. Nothing is easy. We pretend it's easy. I never forget somebody had I was a meme out there. All we have to do is, cut this amount per year, 1% a year, and we can do it. Well, anybody in Congress can do it. Or we need to cut the salaries of everybody in Congress. All we need to do is get everybody in Congress to agree to vote for that. Well, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You make it sound like it's not the problem when it's the problem.
Yeah. Right.
There's really no problem. All we got to do is this. That's what is keeping you from getting there.
All I need to be as rich as Elon Musk is about $180 billion.
You mean
it's that simple? That's all I need.
You've got $2 or $3 billion?
Maybe.
If so, I'm getting my gun.
We've been accused of being billionaires.
I'm getting my gun in.
We've been accused of being
taking some
billionaires.
from you.
By the way, I don't know anybody in radio that's ever been accused of being billionaires.
Yeah, we were. We actually were accused of being billionaires.
Yeah.
Remember that
caller? I know you guys are billionaires.
That was as good as the guy who
the guy was serious, too.
He was.
Yeah.
And that was as good as the guy who said, you guys just get your talking points every day. And I said, what do you think? That Eric and I, like at 9:30, we go on our computer and there are the official talking points that come. And I think we said from the New World Order. And the guy went, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Why you got us? That's
right. Yeah, because I wonder, again, at some point we're not going to be talking tariffs. I wonder if Trump kind of wanted to do this out of the gate to get the deal done, satisfy those who were talking about it. He knows that if the tariffs aren't permanent or they change or whatever, that it's not going to affect him with that part of his base, and he gets to put everything behind him and he moves on. I have no idea. I'm just wondering that because this is very early to take something like that on before they got to the whole tax cuts extension. We'll see. We'll see how it all plays together. And by the way, if he goes to the podium at some point and they can measure and say the number of fentanyl deaths have dropped, and we're measuring that, we can see that, and that's a good sign. That is a victory. That's worth taking a victory lap all day long. And we'll see if that is where it goes. We don't know.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Once a roadside inspection is completed, the officer will close it out, which involves the officer writing or typing up the report. The more the officer found during the inspection, the longer this will take. If violations were discovered, most officers, as a courtesy, will explain the violations to the driver. If there were any out-of-service violations, the officer will normally explain what must be done to get the out-of-service order lifted. Drivers need to be very attentive during this part of the inspection. The driver also needs to read and understand the complete inspection report. After receiving the inspection report, the driver has 24 hours to get the roadside inspection report to the motor carrier. If the driver will not be returning to a company facility within the next 24 hours, the driver needs to know to get it on the way to you via email, mail, or fax within 24 hours. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome. Thank you for being here this morning. There it is. Susan Collins backs Tulsi Gabbard confirmation for DNI. So I don't know. I haven't seen any kind of whip count.
I haven't either, but I haven't seen, and by now I would think we would see if there was any kind of trouble brewing that basically would block the path to confirmation. We'll see where it goes. I don't know when the wide vote is going to be on Pam Bondi, but that's going to happen. They're limiting the Democrats wanted to, slow the roll, do anything they can to slow Trump down, and they wanted to take their time on floor debates, on the floor discussions. And so they, through cloture yesterday on the Pam Bondi thing, said, nope, it's going to be limited, and we're going to go to a wide vote. So I don't know when that is, but it'll be soon. And I think she'll have no problem. I think she'll be confirmed. I do believe Tulsi Gabbard will be confirmed. So it'll be interesting. Wright, the energy secretary, that's, again, a CEO, former CEO of energy company. That's who I think it's someone who's right for the job. When Rex Tillerson was brought in for Secretary of State, I thought, why not energy secretary?
I know.
Yeah. And that didn't work as Secretary of State. But, we'll see where those votes go or when they will happen. It'll be soon.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara.
What happened?
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the picture of Rupert Murdoch in the Oval Office. I just burst out laughing when you said it before.
As Trump is trashing the Wall Street Journal, the owner, Rupert Murdoch, is sitting right there.
As Trump is accusing the Wall Street Journal, and then that means Murdoch with treason to China.
Yeah.
There's Murdoch sitting in his office with him.
Yeah.
I wonder what that conversation was like.
Awkward.
But Murdoch's got this look, the picture they took, the look on his face is just, I don't know if it is any relation to what they talked
Murdoch
about.
sometimes just has that, resting whatever face, where he's kind of, you don't know what the expression is, or maybe a non-expression, but it also could be he's not happy with what you just said or, what's going on. And so he's kind of sitting there. Did you notice he had running shoes on? He's got tennis shoes. He's wearing, I don't know, he does it, but I'm thinking to myself, are they going for a walk later? That's going to be awkward. So you were saying I'm a traitor, Mr. President? I didn't catch all that.
Can I get out of here safely? I'm just gonna leave.
Oh, can you wait, Mr. President? I got a call coming in from China. Yeah, on the all that coming out on the same day that we learned Biden has an agent. So
I didn't hear that story.
Yeah, he's hired a
Biden
firm.
has an agent.
He has a firm, which is basically going to be booking him for, I don't know. Please be a tell-all book. Please be a tell-all book. Please be a tell-all book. And please do the voiceover for your own book on tape. Please, please.
Biden's book, What I Don't Remember.
Yeah.
No, I don't want
a
Biden.
Talent agency. This is from.
I don't want Biden. No, he shouldn't write the book. Somebody in his administration should.
So he's hired CAA, Creative Artists Agency. They represent Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, a number of Hollywood types. Now, he was with them after the Obama administration, basically during Trump's first term, between 2017 and 2020. But it's basically you go out there and whatever, I don't know, you get a Netflix deal. I don't know what he does. You know, the Obamas did Netflix. I don't know where he goes with that, but please do a tell-all book. Please. Someone please have him do a tell-all book. And
he'll sign a deal with Prime.
Yeah.
After Reacher, it's Joe Biden.
Yeah. Do a stand-up special. Do a stand-up special. He just gets into comedy. No, I'm serious. No joke. That'll be the title of his first stand-up special.
No joke.
No joke. It's no joke. Yeah.
All right, I just saw this here and read a couple of sentences, but I just have because I just haven't been to Drudge in a long time. Drudge Report. I went there to see how he's hyping stuff. Trump moves to federalize social wealth fund that will use taxpayer dollars. Will they buy TikTok? So, what is your? We have not talked about this at all. What is your initial thoughts about the government having a social wealth fund to buy companies?
How about no?
No. Hell no.
Well, it's got to be another awkward moment. Elon Musk is the head of Doge and also owns a massive social media site. So it's like, you don't want to own social media. No.
Good God.
I saw that, and I don't know. No,
Well,
if you're talking about pro-growth, an agency, by the way, the administration is all pro-growth, so you don't need to develop anything else to be pro-growth. You're already in that mode. You're already doing that. So I don't, and then I thought to myself, the U.S. owning TikTok. Now, here's the thing, because what would it be branded by the mainstream liberal activist media? Trump owns, if it got to the point where then all of a sudden through that they bought TikTok, it would be Trump owns TikTok.
No.
That would be the headline.
Well, the thing is, are we starting to branch out too much? Should the focus be, because you said, the pro-growth stuff isn't being talked about.
Right.
The taxes are not being talked about every day. It's not being talked about where they wish to go and what the plan is to do that. Are they getting off into too many different areas that really are of no importance to the American people? And this is the danger. Because I think that in a month or two, I think right now, Americans look at it and say, look how easy it was for Trump to control the border. Now he's controlled the border. Hardly anybody's. So that's gone. That's like, okay, that's settled. As long as nothing really flares up, what's the next thing? Inflation. They want prices down. They want tax relief.
By the way,
and we're talking about a federalized social wealth fund. Let's stick to those 10 things and get those done. Nobody really cares, and really no Republican really wants the government to have a taxpayer social wealth fund to buy companies. We're not Saudi Arabia.
Well, by the way, it is why Rupert Murdoch was there along with Larry Ellison, who's the Oracle billionaire. It's why they were at the White House sitting in the room.
So the guy who he's accusing his newspaper of being controlled by China
is there to talk about buying something owned by China.
Buying something owned by China and making it part of the federal government.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting a headache.
Well, because here's the thing.
Now you sound like that secretary on Becker.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Here's where it goes.
I can't think of her name. Here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Here's what you'll immediately hear. Oh, that would be great. A sovereign wealth fund. Implying this fund would be there to make money, make profits. Yeah, but what if it doesn't?
Well, even if I thought it was a great idea, here's what makes it not a great idea. A Democrat president.
Exactly. That's where I'm going. Because what we need to do is, in this sovereign wealth fund, everything that we look at investing in needs to have one woman, one man, and one, what was the third one?
Non-gender, non-binary entity.
And then right after that, they hire 2 white guys. No, not hired. They voted. They chose them.
It's still the funniest thing ever.
That's a DNC for you right there.
Funniest thing ever.
But that's the problem is you create a sovereign wealth fund. Man, the liberals will just have their way with that.
No.
Are you kidding me?
Well, that's how I look at I look at everything, anything the government does, anything the Trump administration does, and I say, okay, what if a Democrat then has this type of control?
Yeah. Right.
Which is always a good way to look at anything, because then you go, okay, maybe that's too much power for the executive branch to have.
Trump's approach is we want to monetize it. You had a number of people out there saying, okay, look, if you could, all right, so you're building out the what ifs, right? If you could take this and you could invest it, you're trying to invest in all the things, that are hot and, you're going to take this and do the Warren Buffett thing with it. Except the other side doesn't believe a Warren Buffett should exist. The other side doesn't believe profits. What the other side would do with it is turn it into a charity. Let's turn this then into a charity, and we're going to
an NGO.
Yeah, exactly. It's going, and then it's going to have authority. I mean, the Sovereign Wealth Fund would have a Sovereign Wealth Committee, the Sovereign Wealth Department.
Well, they're like, get rid of USAID. Just give us a sovereign wealth.
Just give us and they take it, and then of course they apply it. Like a John Kerry would. We're going to use the money to, of course, fight all of the misinformation out there, aka destroy the First Amendment. No. I love the spirit of let's monetize the daylights out of what we have, but you're already in that mode. And the first and foremost, everything at the top of the list is about energy. taking something that's in the ground in its raw form.
But what do you want? I don't want the government monetizing anything.
No, well, but this is what they're talking about. They're talking about investing in TikTok that monetizes and then would further build the sovereign wealth fund. That's what they're talking about.
But it's owned by the damn government. No,
that's what I mean. I love the spirit of being able
I don't
to
love
expand.
The spirit. I don't love the spirit of it at all.
Can I finish?
Okay.
I love the spirit of going out and monetizing everything. That's great. You're expanding the economy. And where I began is where I am right now. You're already doing that. It starts with imagine we had materials in the ground that weren't being used, which means they really don't have any worth in the ground. But the moment you brought them above ground, they had a global demand.
Where you confuse me is the spirit of the private enterprise doing it is a completely different ballgame than the government doing it.
I understand that.
Okay, it didn't sound that when the way you started it was like you love the spirit of Trump and these people talking about, expanding this sovereign wealth fund.
No.
But the government shouldn't be in it. It didn't make sense. Okay, I understand. I understand where you are now.
I didn't say that.
I understand where you are now.
Yeah. I didn't say that.
I understand where you are now.
I was saying I love the spirit of monetizing everything
in general. Yes.
Expanding wealth.
Yeah, me too.
You can't, once you set up a sovereign wealth fund, you basically given the government another entire entity to go off and do, well, we should use this to buy people houses. We should use this to buy, that's exactly where it's going to go.
It's the opposite of Doge.
That's why I said it's got to be awkward when you're talking to the leader of Doge, who owns one of the biggest social media companies, and you ask him, and he's like, oh, well, yeah, but no. The move doesn't, if you're talking about bringing in any of these people, Ellison, Murdoch is a traitor to China. We know that. But if you're bringing in any of these people, great, bend their ear for a little while. What do you think needs to be done? How do we expand wealth? Because it is the private sector. That's why you brought them in. And you keep it there. We already have the game in place. We already have what it takes. You don't need to buy TikTok. We already own what's in the ground right now. Go get it.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So I'm just reading the headline. Joe Biden signs with Hollywood Talent Agency. I'm just trying to see the headline.
Yeah.
I keep thinking, the new movie, Joe and the Volcano.
Exactly.
One of Tom Hanks's first movie that the first 15, 20 minutes is just like So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Right, yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely just great.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden, what's he going to do?
Well, here's this one story. According to a report by the LA Times, Biden is likely to have, quote, lucrative opportunities. He's already had that. Burisma, China. They said the last time he was signed as CAA, his income rose to from less than $400,000 per year in his job as as vice president to more than $15 million over a 2-year period. Well, that was then. This is now. We'll see how it goes.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.